So how fun is this going to be? Or I'm going to get inspired by a nurse that inspires nurses. Welcome, Lori, to our Leadership Care series.
Thank you for having me, Mark. Really, really happy to be here.
No, it's my pleasure. Shout out to Raquel Zuzarte for introducing us. Great friend and really good at what she does in marketing and all that stuff. So way to go for introducing us. And I think we should start by if you can briefly introduce yourself. We'll get into the stuff in a minute, but a little bit about where you're from originally, where you are now, family, favorite color, maybe something you've never told anybody in the world and reveal it right now, which would be so cool, and stuff like that. And then we'll get into the stuff. So take it away.
Well, my name is Dr. Lori Armstrong. I say doctor specifically because I still get uncomfortable being introduced doctor, but my husband tells me to take advantage of every opportunity since I cried every semester for 4 years earning the doctorate. So Lori Armstrong, I am a nurse by clinical background and training, one of the biggest honors of my career to be a nurse. I'm originally from New York. Mark, you might detect a tiny little New York accent slipping out now and again.
No, I thought it was
don't know.
It was Kentucky or something.
I sound Southern, huh? Originally from New York, but I've had amazing career opportunities that have allowed me to live in many parts of this wonderful country. From the Northeast to the West Coast and a few states in between. So I'm very, very fortunate for that. My nursing career started as a neonatal intensive care nurse.
Well, before you get into that, tell me
Yes.
about family, things like that.
I already shared with you from New York. I hail from Long Island. You know, people from New York like to clearly define where they're from. Long Island, upstate, Manhattan, won't get into who likes who in which borough, but grew up on Long Island and exactly. I was raised by amazing parents who did an outstanding job being themselves 25 years old, both my parents, and had 3 daughters under the age of 2 at 25 years old. So I am an identical twin. So they got 2 for the price of 1, or no, my dad will tell you they got charged for 2, which was very stressful for them. Sure. My parents and I come from very humble beginnings. My parents had no college education when they had their kids, and it really, I believe, drove them to raise their 3 daughters, myself, my identical twin, and my older sister. She's 2 years older than my twin and I. It drove them to focusing significantly on ensuring we had all the opportunities that they didn't, so we wouldn't have to struggle. And college was never an option growing up when in that family. It was, where are you going? And when, it was always, you will be going to college. What are you most interested in? And they raised 3 by any measure, I would imagine, 3 successful daughters who are very independent and strong. And we got there because of their commitment to us.
Awesome. Yeah. Anything else you want to share about family?
I believe that my dad, being a Long Island, Nassau County police officer, and what he saw and what he was exposed to really impacted both my sisters and I dramatically. It just led us to always want to help other people. It was just part of our upbringing.
So that's a good segue to ask, so what were you like as a kid and a teenager? Were you playing doctor or nurse or both, or psychiatrist? Were you playing
yeah.
Did you play an instrument? What were you like?
Well, growing up an identical twin is a unique experience. That might be for another podcast. I don't know. If I do okay today, maybe you'll invite me back for that.
Well, you know what they say in LA? They say we always leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel.
All right. Very, very interesting. to hear sides, especially from twin B. I'm the younger twin. But anyway, as a child, I wasn't, I was one of those nurses who always knew they wanted to be a nurse. But I wasn't, playing dolls and pretending to be a nurse or a doctor. That wasn't it. I came to it by having a passion and early commitment, my sisters and I, both, all three of us, wanting to stand up for people who weren't being treated fairly. And that's how it all started. One of my favorite stories my father tells, although he tells it over and over. You know how parents can do that.
Well, I hate to say it, we start doing it too.
Yes, I know. I'm guilty. I'm guilty of it. But one of my father's favorite stories to tell is that I was about 8 years old and the doorbell rang. I was up in my room. My dad answered the door, and it was my twin sisters and mine softball coach. We were in the local neighborhood girls softball team. And the coach came over and said to my parents, "Can we please have Lori's softball uniform?" And my father was like, "Why do you need her uniform?" And the coach said, "Oh, I guess you don't know she quit the team today." And my parents were taken aback. And the coach, my father said, "Why did she do that? What happened?" And the coach shared with him that I got on my bicycle after school, rode over to her house and quit because I felt the coaches were not playing everyone fairly, and I wasn't going to put up with it anymore.
Nice.
And I joke with my dad, please not again, don't torture everyone. But it really is one of the first memories I have of feeling responsible to stick up for or advocate for things that were not being done fairly. And, over the years, I grew to be attracted to caring professions and things like that. And as a nurse, as a nurse, caring for the vulnerable, being the voice of the vulnerable, that is, embedded from day one of nursing school, no matter how long you to go to college or receive additional education. But every day when you get to that hospital, I'm sorry, I believe very strongly it's a sacred honor to be the voice of the vulnerable. And for me, as a neonatal nurse, sick children, sick babies, you are the voice of those who are too small and too young to speak. They don't have a voice, and often their parents are too scared to speak. They're so overwhelmed. So it started very young for me in very humble beginnings, and I got to live it every day in my early days as a clinical bedside nurse. So a pretty big sacred honor as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's kind of, who would have thought you'd end up on a Leaders Who Care series?
Fits perfectly for me. Caring and compassion is the root of all the nursing profession.
It is also interesting because I relate a lot to sports, and I remember parents arguing that you got to win the game. Why'd you put that person on? Well, that person deserved to be on at that time. And what I found out later, not to get too off track here, is especially men, but more women that are working now too, they think back and they sometimes have one moment in time that a coach or somebody believed in them, put them at a special time, even if they scored or didn't score. And they use that as the foundation of their whole life confidence.
Those are the moments growing up that you never forget. And, I always think about that. I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. That's influence right there. Right. So when you think about the people who have influenced you along the way,
which we're going to talk about in a little bit, as a matter of fact. So
okay, good.
You're too fast. My mom told me to stay away from fast women. I don't know what I'm going to.
Yeah. Fast women, and especially those from New York, have a tendency to do that.
I'm from Montreal. We're not the same, but there's some connections, and
there's a lot of similarities. Yes.
Not just bagels, even though we have better. But we won't get to that. So tell us a little bit about your initial journey. You got your bachelor's in nursing, you got your master's at Queen's, then you got your doctorate in nursing practice, and add Harvard to that for executive education. I mean, Florence Nightingale would have been very proud of this whole thing. So what intrigued you to take that path?
Well, when I became a clinical nurse, I saw right away, of course, the impact that hands-on care had on the patient, but also the impact clinical care had on the patient and the family. So, every nurse, physician, or any clinician will knows this, but will tell you that you take care of so much more than who's in the bed or on the stretcher. It's everyone who's related to them. And so that impact was important. But what caught my attention were the leaders in the clinical unit or the leaders at the hospital. Good or bad, leadership matters, right?
Yeah.
They make or break outcomes. So, if you're a great leader at a, car factory, I should not use other industries. I'm not an expert, but if efficiency is better, you could produce more, or the bottom line, stock prices go up, right? But when hospital and healthcare leaders are better and stronger, patients do better and families do better. So patient and outcomes thrive and soar. And that just attracted me. I caught the leadership bug as soon as I saw that. And I actually saw it because I had a bad manager in the beginning of my career. And I wanted to participate or contribute to making things better. And that started my journey. So sought additional advanced education, getting my master's, and then again for my doctorate. But I will tell you, Mark, that my time at Harvard with the executive program, 4 weeks. I did ask my father, he's a great amateur photographer. I did ask him to doctor the diploma a little bit from the executive education program to just a Harvard diploma. He said no. But anyway, it was,
who would have thought?
Exactly, those morals. But that time I spent in the executive education program at Harvard crystallized everything. Like it was like the path I was on led to my time at Harvard, and it came to me that even as a long-term hospital leader, that a nurse leader, I could have even more impact, broader impact outside the walls of the hospital.
All right, you're going too fast for me because I got to ask you a question on that too. So
okay, I'll stop.
You're giving me great segues here. So, well, let me go back a minute. So, Fifth Element, we actually were founded on the premise of that businesses and organizations and leaders can do way better when they're doing good.
Yes.
You would hope that nursing and hospitals, that's at the core of everything there,
yes,
especially related to children. So I wanted to ask you, for example, the fifth industrial revolution is about humanity. The fourth is about technology, but the fifth is about humanity. So your background has been around that and around efficiency in a system, and especially like you're saying, patient care, family, and family experience, employee experience, and then it goes into the community as well. Can you chat a little bit about how you come to balance the economics, if you will, that's going on with the care, with the social impact? And I think of this show, and I know it's a show, but New Amsterdam,
yes,
where the medical director, young guy, always says, "How can we help you?" That's always that's the theme of the whole thing. So how do you balance it?
I love that you use the word balance, Mark, because it's a balance, and maybe over a week or a month or a year, it really actually is balanced. Economics and social impact. I think about zooming out in the economics of healthcare. It's tough. And our brutal reality right now of the economics, actually the impact and enduring impact of COVID on hospitals and the healthcare system, it's extraordinary. So as we at Inspire support leaders and executives throughout the country, helping them stay focused is really, really important. So just zooming out a little bit on nursing and economics, it's really, really important to highlight and to note that there are 4.5 million nurses in this world. So everybody knows a nurse or has been touched by a nurse. I love that, actually. 4.5 million nurses. So when you look at economics of healthcare, or actually the health of society, nursing is like the key component to invest in, right? So, investing in nursing and investing in nurses who are at the point of care. There's a lot of them, 4.5 million, and they are the most common vehicle through which healthcare is delivered in the country, right? So when you get nursing care delivery right, outside even of the walls of the hospital systems, out in our communities, the economics follow. The economics follow because when you are at the point of care, it could be in a clinic, a stretcher, hospital stretcher, a hospital room, but out in the community, the proximity matters a lot. So they're identifying the needs of the community, and the community gets healthier and healthier because of that. And that's the economics of it all, right? When the community, when we as people, we as groups, we as a nation are healthier, the economics follow.
So the economics then are very much so in preventive care. They're very much in, and they touch on the physical, the mental, the spiritual as well.
Absolutely. And so prevention, economics and the prevention, or economics of healthcare and prevention, should be inextricably linked. The challenge is that some of our payment systems have not, reimbursement systems have not caught up with that yet. We're getting there. We've made a lot of progress in this country with public reporting of health outcomes of not only hospital systems and providers, but the health status of communities themselves. So we're getting there. And I also like that you focused on the whole body, not just physical well-being, if you're looking at, the levels of disease and things, but the mental health and well-being, of course, has been brought into much clearer focus since the pandemic, and it's critical. So identifying that early on and having the resources available for everyone, that's our current really call to action.
And last on this particular point, there's the economics of the well-being of the nurses as well.
100% spot on. And the well-being of nurses, fundamentally, or simply, I should say, if the people who are responsible for caring for you are not healthy themselves, the equation doesn't work. A plus B does not equal C. And, as a nurse myself for over 30 years, we aren't raised that way as caregivers. We aren't educated that way. We are educated to always be giving. And for too many decades, we've given more than we've had inside ourselves. So it really is a top priority for every leader in the country, whether you're in a hospital, a healthcare system, or the professional associations that represent us. Top of mind, a number one priority is well-being. What do we need to do or must do for the people who take care of us? Yeah, it's a challenging time, Mark, but it's an exciting time for nurses to be invested in. In fact, when we consult around the country on this topic, I had a group of amazing nurse leaders, 150 across the whole system, and we asked them to identify 5 well-being behaviors that were directed solely at themselves, not at the patients they care for, not at the teams with the teams they care for, and not for the families of patients, they themselves. What does a healthy behavior look like for them at work? I will tell you, there were pages and pages of blank. I'm a master facilitator for years. I called in some of my great colleague reinforcements who were in the next room. I'm like, you got to help me. I can't get this group to move forward. And one very, very honest leader who was open to being vulnerable with us in front of all her friends said, no one has ever asked us about our own well-being and what it looks like what we need to take care of ourselves at work. No one.
Well, welcome to the fifth industrial revolution, which is about humanity.
Absolutely. And think about that, fifth industrial revolution, humanity. Nursing was founded at its core, was all about humanity, right? But it was humanity looking out. And now we know more. We know more. We have to do better for our own.
Well, you put the oxygen mask on you first, right? Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Exactly. And we have to take that seriously. Any clinician, of course, speaking about nursing, but anybody who is out there giving of themselves day after day, nurse, physician, social worker, policeman, fireman, we've got to take care of the people who care for us.
How do you describe your experiences, including the positive and negatives?
Yes.
COVID, which some of that was so disappointing for me because first they're heroes, and now you have strikes and you have this and that and different types of, which we have short memories really in this place.
Right.
But so the positive negatives of that and created the foundation for founding, inspiring nurse leaders.
Right.
How you combine, quote I took from maybe a website or whatever, how you combine humanity, humor, and contagious energy to transform leadership.
I'll tell you, to the first part of your question, Mark, about positive and negative experiences of COVID. I had actually just started the company a year before COVID. And then when COVID hit, I was asked to go back to a big hospital system on the West Coast to help out during the, first year, obviously. And I was so happy to go help. My husband seemed a little happier, though, to get me out of the house. We were working home. He seemed to say, no, I'll help you pack, Lori. Anyway, but having the honor of helping a 21 hospital system in California during that first year was, an honor for me to do that. But I will tell you, there are many stories through COVID that stopped everybody in their tracks. But for a nurse leader to stop me in my tracks, that one of my responsibilities was being the support and executive liaison for every chief nursing officer in the hospital system during that time. And speaking to many of them week after week after week. And one of them finally put it like this to me. She said, Lori, as nurses, we are now not just nurses, we are the proxy family for everyone, because at the time there was no visitation. So we are there when they are taking their very first breath alone. The woman is having a baby. We are there for their very first breath and being the surrogate partner and family for them and facilitating that communication, a lot of times by our own personal cell phones, because things weren't up and running yet technology-wise. And then we are the family for the first breath and then for the very last breath. And facilitating families to say goodbye. And that stopped me in my tracks. That not only validated and amplified to me, you're getting me choked up here, yet amplified the sacred role of a nurse. I love my physician colleagues. I love all other disciplines in healthcare, because nursing can't be successful unless we all have partners, right? However, the nurse is the person that is at the bedside 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And to have the honor and the privilege of ushering in a new life and saying the last goodbye during COVID cemented my purpose. I know that.
I could feel that. Let's face it, those are the most humongous things in life.
And it actually translated and enabled for when I left that emergency COVID role after 1 year to keep growing this business so we could help as many leaders in healthcare as possible. It amplified, resonated, and expanded the values of the company. One of the values is being the voice of the vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And encouraging leaders, and this is challenging for many leaders, but particularly nurse leaders, to use your voice with authority, right? So when I'm working with especially newer executive leaders and they're struggling a little bit to find their voice, when we talk about, and I remind them of what they've done at that bedside and how they've run a code, saved this life, held the hand of a dying child, all this other stuff you're doing, it's a lot easier. You are made for so much more.
Well, there's been a lot of studies. This kind of relates. I do think it does relate. There's been a lot of studies that say the thing that fills people's hearts and souls more than anything is belonging, and holding a hand is belonging, and what you're talking about is belonging.
Well, exactly. And I'll tell you, Mark, that a lot of my work, we help leaders not only grow in their executive journey, but also have that stronger voice for the profession as a whole, and that belonging and mattering and valuing of not only themselves as a leader, but how they translate that to the teams they're responsible for. We spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah, and getting people to trust. Is that, let's face it, most of us don't know medically what's going on, and you're trusting. It's not like trusting your car to the mechanic. This is like real life stuff.
And when you say mechanics, it can become mechanical for a leader when you do the same thing every day. And it's never mechanical for the patient and the family. Never. They hang on your every word.
Yeah.
And to help leaders understand and know that so they could model that for their teams, really critical.
And so that's another good segue. You're good at segueing me and like that. You mentioned before about community, and I worked with some hospitals here and in Florida. The issue of health equity, there's not really health equity. Are healthcare executives taking advantage of nurse leaders to engage in the community? In other words, healthcare is not just when you come to the hospital and sick. You can have healthcare outside of the community that can really help a lot of different things, and understanding the actual impact on the business economics and attracting and retaining nurses and great people, and making the community better.
There are so many examples of hospital leaders or healthcare systems taking advantage of or leveraging nurses out in the community. So many examples. But I would say that it's not systematic. It's not part of the fabric of healthcare. And that is a very, very, very significant problem. Nursing in any country, but even in this country, are the most common vehicle through which healthcare is delivered, is nursing. So when you invest in nursing, whether in the hospital or out in the community, you're actually investing in the health of the nation.
Right.
And, we haven't cracked that nut, Mark. We have great traction right now, but we're not where we need to be. We're just not.
Yeah, there's so much opportunity in the sense of everything from, let's say, food and exercise are the obvious things, but just mental attitude, you name it, and belonging, and someone really cares, that I think for economics purposes would maybe prevent a lot of people from having to go to the hospital.
Well, 100%. And I would add accessibility as well.
Absolutely.
Access to healthcare, big challenge. If we can make more progress and traction there, we're going to make progress and traction on equity. I spent many years, nearly 6 years at Kaiser Permanente in Northern California, and they have such a different model. Their expertise, bar none, is prevention. And when you look at what they're doing in particularly the state of California, throughout northern and southern, we could learn a lot. Really could learn a lot prevention wise.
I know Cedar Sinai here pretty well, and they've got, the mobile things going out and this and that.
Yes.
There, at the beginning, it was hard because they don't want the white savior coming to fix you. You've got to do it in a different way, type of thing, to really help and care. And you're right, access is hard. If you're an immigrant, if you're not legal, and you're scared, and and what we got to understand is it still costs us not just money, but it costs us crime. It costs us all sorts of stuff going on in the community.
Absolutely.
So,
and there's no silver bullet. There's no easy answer. There's no easy answer. And when you talk about the white savior, it's very complicated. DEI and belonging are very complex. And when you look at it through the lens of healthcare, let's look at diversity I'll just pick on nursing, since it's,
yeah.
I'm a nurse and it's my expertise. When you look at, there's probably maybe 60 to 65% of nurses themselves are white Caucasian, 10% African American, 10% Asian. We need to grow that, and that's going to take decades to turn that ship. And there's a lot of investment and innovation in that area on how to get there, but we have quite a bit of ways to go, Mark.
Well, I guess with respect to that, when we were launched 5 years ago, it was at the UN on International Women's Day, and so we've done a lot in that realm of a woman, Sustainable Development Goal number 5, and empowerment, et cetera, of women, and how important it was. And I'm thinking about it. Nursing was equal to women. It was a nice thing to do, a good thing to do, but it was lesser. Just the same as women were lesser. And it had to pick up and come. And it was a big deal to get a man becoming a nurse, but then he was considered kind of fluffy in his own right, in that sense, which is crazy. With respect to that, everything we do impact-wise or talent search-wise has diversity in it. Tell us a little bit about your journey as a woman, and maybe even as a nurse and a woman, in the healthcare sector. How did you navigate? How did you thrive? How did you become to be engaged so you could make such a big impact?
Well, I will say I have to go back to my parents, to be honest, Mark. They raised my sisters and I with the notion of you can do and you can achieve anything. But it wasn't you can do and you can achieve anything because you're special and you're our kid and no, it was you work hard, you set your mind on something, and you get the best education you can. You will achieve and do anything you put your mind to. So I don't see a lot of barriers. I really don't. And I attribute and I thank my parents for that. I know that I could do it. They gave me that courage, right? But growing up career-wise as a nurse, being part of when I grew up as a bedside nurse and an early leader, 95% female profession. 95%. So I didn't really come up against any gender related issues. It was more discipline related issues. Certain disciplines who, some specialties in medicine are tougher to collaborate with. How did that say? Tougher to collaborate with than others when you're a newer, younger nurse finding your way. But I didn't really come across much gender issues, obviously, until I got into higher levels of leadership and exposed to more things outside of the walls of the hospital. But I am, and learning to navigate that, I share with my clients, my executive clients, and senior level clients all the time, when you know what you stand for and what you believe in, the navigation is easier.
100%.
When not only if you know what you stand for, what you believe in, and what you'll fight for, navigating comes a lot easier. And I always felt like, Mark, that nurses are amazing at advocacy. They are fantastic at advocating for the patient and family. You know, as when I was a chief nursing officer, get out of my way. If I had to advocate for more nurses, more staff, there, I hardly ever was told no. I'm being honest.
Mhm.
With that said, it wasn't always as easy to advocate for me personally. You know, as a leader, like if I was interviewing for a new job, that negotiating of salary or things like that weren't always as easy. But when it's for the patient and family, nurse leaders are very, very good at that.
Well, doesn't that point to the fact of, again, being trained, for lack of a better word, that you are at this level, and you're
Yes.
as good as the guy, if you will, and
Yep.
stuff like that, and you have to get by that. But I think what you said is super important, and I've heard this from a lot of men and women, is if you are authentic, if those are your values, and you really do believe in them, that will come across. Just bring it, and you'll get more chance of being respected. There'll be some idiots that'll give, challenge or whatnot, but for the most part, people are craving for passion and authenticity and fighting, if you will, for something as important as that. So one last quick question before my last question is with that, go get them. You can do whatever you want. Did you ever want to be a doctor?
Never wanted to be a doctor. Never. When I learned what nursing was and that it was rooted at its core, honestly, I don't want to sound hokey. At nursing's core is a heart.
Right.
And that is the foundation and how the profession started, how Florence Nightingale started the profession. Without care and compassion, there is no nursing. And that's where my heart was care and compassion at the bedside. And I always teach, whether you're a CEO or a frontline emerging leader, the heart of the hospital is at the bedside where care is delivered.
Sure.
And especially to my chief nursing officer and CEO executive coaching clients, I tell them, don't ever lose sight of that bedside. You will be far more successful if you don't get too far away from that. And there are strategies to help them make sure they never get too far away from that, but that's where the heart is. And again, I respect wholeheartedly my physician colleagues, and I would not have had the opportunities or achievements without them. But
well, I think what you're saying is most people actually recognize they might love the doctors, but they feel the heart of the nurse.
Yes.
And so I think
100%.
So this is the last question because we'll have to do a sequel apparently. One client told me in 2021 about the year 2020. He said, "Mark, the year 2020 it flew by slowly," and I thought, what a great comment, because it feels like that. Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday. Sometimes it feels like it was forever ago. With the last basically 2 or 3 years being mishkabibble, to use another one of those. Can you share with us what you're most grateful for and also what you're most hopeful for?
Oh, wow. Most grateful for, I think, if nothing else, the pandemic has made us all take stock of what's important.
Right.
And I am, I've talked enough about my family. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities that I've been allowed. I'm blessed by God 1,000 ways, Mark. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a nurse and be intimately involved with so many patients and their families. But now in this second phase, if you will, of my career and ability to impact healthcare and hospital and nurse leaders, I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Very cool. And hopeful?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind. Hopeful, professionally hopeful. I know, like I know my name, that COVID-19 is nursing as a profession is nursing's crucible. We have been stressed and heated like never before in our 200 or so year history. And there is something beautiful happening. I know it like I know my name. And the fire, the challenge right now is really hard. But to quote one of my mentors, Barry Posner, nothing good ever comes out of the status quo. I have great hope for the future of nursing.
And lots of good things come out of, or a crisis not taken advantage of is
Yes,
something like that.
exactly.
Well said. Well, I'm grateful that you are a leader, nurse who cares. And I'd have you at my bedside anytime, so, but hopefully that doesn't have to be the way we meet.
Yeah, that's right. You're looking pretty good. So, but
Oh,
it would be my honor.
No, it's and after talking to you, I'm feeling even more and more hopeful that the heart is still there, and so much good can happen. So
Wonderful.
for sharing all that.
Thank you, Mark.